I'm Vivian, 36 years old. And let me just say this up front. I know I screwed up. Okay? But it's not like I'm some horrible person or whatever. I just feel like my side of things gets ignored. Anyway, here's what happened. So yesterday started off like any regular day. We were driving to his parents' house for Sunday lunch. It's this routine thing we've been doing for years now. And honestly, it's fine. Boring, but fine. My husband Grayson, who's 38, was driving as usual because he's one of those people who can't stand my driving. He's always nitpicking. You're too distracted, he says. Or, you never check your blind spots. Like, I've had maybe a couple of small fender benders, but who hasn't? We're sitting at this red light, and I'm scrolling through my phone, because I've got this group chat blowing up. My best friend Lila was sending memes, and yeah, I was also replying to someone from work, Declan, one of Grayson's co-workers. I know how that sounds, but it's nothing shady, okay? Declan's funny and easy to talk to. And yeah, we've been texting more lately. It's not like Grayson doesn't know I talk to him. I've mentioned Declan before, but of course, Grayson never pays attention to anything I say. Anyway, I didn't think it was a big deal. Declan had texted me some joke about this team meeting they'd both been in, and I laughed, so I replied. That's when Grayson glanced over. I didn't even notice at first until I heard him go. Who are you texting? I said, just Leela, without thinking, because honestly, I didn't want to start anything. It wasn't a total lie, I was texting Lila too. But then he leaned over, and before I could angle my phone away, he saw Declan's name at the top of the screen. His face changed instantly, like, you know, when someone's calm one second and the next, they're just ... Not? Yeah, it was like that. The light turned green, and he just started driving without saying a word. That's almost worse than yelling, by the way. The silence was heavy. My stomach dropped, but I kept fiddling with my phone like nothing happened. I thought maybe he'd let it go, but no. Grayson doesn't let things go. After a few blocks, he pulled the car into this random parking lot and just stopped. He turned to me and said, "You lied to my face." What the hell, Vivian? Now, I don't like confrontation. I really don't. So I tried to play it cool. I said, "Relax, it's not a big deal. Declan just sent me something funny, and I replied. That's it." But of course, that wasn't good enough for him. He kept pushing. "Why are you even texting him? What could you possibly have to talk about with Declan that you can't talk to me about? Like, how do you even answer that? I mean, I wasn't doing anything wrong. At least, I didn't think so. But he made it sound like I was guilty or something, so I got defensive. I told him, "You're overreacting. It's not like I'm hiding anything. If you want to see the texts, here." I shoved my phone toward him, but he didn't take it. He just stared at me like I'd already admitted to some crime. And then he said it. "You lied. That's enough for me." That's when I started losing it a little. I mean, he's acting like I'm the bad guy, but let's not forget, this is the same man who leaves me hanging all the time. He's married to his job. Half the time when I try to talk to him, he's either glued to his laptop or zoning out in front of the TV. And now he wants to come at me because I texted Declan. Please. I told him exactly that. I said, maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have to talk to someone else. Okay, not my best moment, but I was frustrated. I didn't mean it the way it came out. But once it's out there, you can't take it back, you know? That's when he lost it. He didn't yell, exactly, but his voice got all low and cold, which is somehow worse. He said, "So now it's my fault? You're unbelievable, Vivian." Then he grabbed my phone off the dashboard and tossed it into the back seat like it was garbage. "You want to text Declan? Fine, But don't expect me to stick around while you flirt with my coworker behind my back. Flirt? Seriously? That's what he thinks this is. I tried to explain, but he wasn't having it. He just started driving again, and the whole rest of the ride was silent. By the time we got to his parents' house, I was fuming. I mean, how dare he accuse me of something like that? But of course, I had to plaster on a fake smile and act like everything was fine. Because God forbid his mom notices anything's wrong. The whole lunch was a blur. I couldn't stop replaying the fight in my head. Was I wrong to text Declan? Maybe. But it's not like I cheated or anything. And let's not forget Grayson isn't exactly husband of the year. He's cold, distant, and way too serious. Declan's just fun. It's nice to talk to someone who actually listens and laughs at my jokes. Is that such a crime? When we got home, Grayson went straight to the bedroom without saying a word. I thought about following him, maybe trying to smooth things over. But then I decided against it. Why should I be the one to apologize? He's the one who blew this whole thing out of proportion. So I stayed in the living room, scrolling through my phone like I didn't have a care in the world. And that's where we are now. He's giving me the silent treatment, and I'm pretending I don't care. But honestly, I don't know where this is going. Part of me thinks he'll just get over it, like he always does. But another part of me wonders if this is the start of something bigger. I don't know, maybe I should have handled it differently. But at the same time, I don't think I did anything that bad. Do you? By the next morning, Grayson still hadn't said a word to me. Not even a good morning or his usual grumble about running late. He just got dressed, grabbed his coffee, and left for work. I told myself it was fine, that he'd cool off like he always did and everything would go back to normal. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew this felt different. When I picked up my phone, I noticed I had a message from Declan. It wasn't anything big, just a meme about coffee and Mondays, but it made me hesitate. I thought about not replying. Maybe it wasn't worth it. But then I felt that familiar twinge of annoyance at Grayson. Why should I change what I do just because he's being all dramatic? So I sent a quick, haha, so true, and tossed my phone aside. It's not like I was doing anything wrong. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Grayson came home that evening. Quiet again, but this time, he was watching me. I could feel it. Every time I picked up my phone or left the room, his eyes followed me, like he was trying to catch me in the act of something. It was ridiculous. Like, if he had something to say, he should just say it instead of acting like some moody teenager. But of course he didn't. He just stewed in his own thoughts while I tried to pretend I didn't notice. Finally, after dinner, he spoke up. So, you and Declan text a lot, huh? I rolled my eyes, because honestly I was over this whole thing. Not really, just here and there. Why? He shrugged. But it wasn't casual. It was one of those fake shrugs where you can tell the person is about to drop some accusation. Just seems weird. Like, I didn't even know you guys were friends like that. I sighed, already feeling the frustration bubbling up. Grayson, we work in the same industry. We talk sometimes. What's the big deal? The big deal, he said, setting his fork down with way too much force, is that you lied about it. And now I'm wondering what else you're lying about. That hit a nerve. Are you serious right now? You're acting like I committed a crime or something. It was a stupid text, Grayson. Get over it. He didn't back down, though. If anything, he leaned in harder. It's not just a stupid text, Vivian. You lied to my face. And now you're acting all defensive, like you've got something to hide. I felt my cheeks flush, but I wasn't about to let him see me sweat. Oh, please. You're the one making this into a whole thing. If you're so insecure about Declan, that's your problem, not mine. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. I knew that look. It was his lawyer brain kicking in, piecing things together, trying to build a case. I hated that look. "I'm insecure," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "Or are you just avoiding the question because you know I'm right?" I laughed, but it came out forced. "Right about what, Grayson? That I'm secretly running off with Declan? Give me a break." He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. I didn't say that. But now that you mention it, I threw my hands up, exasperated. "Oh my God, you're impossible. You want to know what's really going on?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But keep spinning your little theories if it makes you feel better." That seemed to shut him up for the moment. But I could tell he wasn't convinced. Not really. He just crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair, watching me like he was waiting for me to slip up. It was infuriating. The next few days were tense. Grayson started coming home later than usual, and when he was home, he barely talked to me. But the weirdest part was how he started checking things. Like, he'd glance at my phone when it buzzed, or he'd ask these random questions about my day that felt more like traps than actual curiosity. One night, I caught him looking through my laptop while he thought I was in the shower. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He jumped like a kid caught stealing cookies. "Nothing. Just checking something." I snatched the laptop away and glared at him. "Are you serious right now? Do you think I'm hiding some secret stash of love letters from Declan or something? Get a grip, Grayson." He looked embarrassed but didn't apologize. Instead, he said, "If you're not hiding anything, then why are you so defensive?" That one got to me. I wanted to scream, but I knew that would just make me look guiltier. So I forced a laugh and said, "I'm defensive because you're treating me like a criminal for no reason. It's exhausting." He didn't say anything else, but I could tell he still didn't believe me. And honestly, that made me mad. Like, yeah, maybe I wasn't being completely honest, but it's not like I was cheating. Grayson was acting like I'd already been convicted. And it wasn't fair. He grabbed his keys, looked at me, and said, "I don't want this to turn into something ugly, Vivian. But if there's something I need to know, just tell me now." I stared at him, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to come clean, to tell him that maybe I'd crossed a line with Declan, not physically, but emotionally, maybe. But then I thought about how Grayson had been treating me these past few days, like I was already guilty no matter what I said. And that just pissed me off. "There's nothing to tell, Grayson," I said, my voice cold. "You're paranoid. That's your problem, not mine." He sighed, shaking his head like he didn't believe a word I was saying. But he didn't argue. He just walked out the door, leaving me alone with the sinking feeling that things were spiraling out of control. Grayson didn't come home that night until almost midnight. When he walked through the door, he looked exhausted, but not in the usual long day at work kind of way. This was something different. I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV, but really just scrolling through Instagram on my phone. When I glanced up at him, his face said it all. He'd been thinking about this the whole day. "Late night?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though my stomach was in knots. He just nodded and went straight to the kitchen to grab a beer. I could tell he was working up to something, but I wasn't going to make it easy for him. I stayed on the couch, scrolling like I didn't have a care in the world. Finally, he came into the living room and sat down across from me, not next to me like he usually did. He stared at me for a minute, and I could feel the tension building. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady but sharp. I sighed and put my phone down, trying not to roll my eyes. "About what? Are we really still on this?" He didn't flinch. "Yeah, we are. Because things aren't adding up, Vivian. I've been thinking about it, and none of this makes sense." "Oh my God," I groaned. leaning back against the couch. Grayson, you're blowing this way out of proportion. I told you there's nothing going on. Then why did you lie? He shot back. Why did you say you were texting Lila when you were texting Declan? Why are you so defensive every time I bring it up? And why ... He paused, like he was trying to steady himself. ... Why do I keep catching you in these little half-truths? I felt my chest tighten, but I forced myself to stay calm. Half-truths, seriously? You're acting like I've committed some huge betrayal. It was a dumb text, Grayson. Let it go. He shook his head, his jaw clenched. It's not just about the text anymore, Vivian. It's about how you've been acting. The sneaking around. The excuses. The lies. It's like you're hiding something, and I can't ignore that. I could feel my pulse quickening. He was pushing too hard, and I knew I had to shut this down before he started piecing things together. You're being ridiculous, I said, standing up and crossing my arms. You're turning nothing into something because you're bored or insecure or whatever. But it's not my job to manage your paranoia. His eyes darkened, and for a moment I thought he might actually yell. But instead, he just sat there staring at me like he was trying to see through me. It made my skin crawl. You know what's funny? He said finally, his voice low and cold. I want to believe you. I really do. But every time I try, you give me another reason not to. I felt a flash of anger rise in me, but I swallowed it down. That's on you, Grayson, not me. I've been honest with you. He let out a bitter laugh. Honest? Really? Then why don't you show me your texts with Declan? If there's nothing to hide, prove it. That caught me off guard. I hadn't deleted the messages yet, mostly because I didn't think he'd actually demand to see them. My mind raced, trying to come up with an excuse that wouldn't make me look guilty. I'm not showing you my texts, I said finally, trying to sound firm. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because I shouldn't have to. I'm allowed to have private conversations without you breathing down my neck. His lips tightened, and I could see the hurt flash across his face before he masked it with anger. Private conversations with my coworker. You don't see how that looks. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, even though I could feel the walls closing in. It doesn't look like anything because there's nothing going on. You're the one turning this into some big conspiracy. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and looked me straight in the eye. Do you even care how this is making me feel? Do you care that I've been walking around all day, sick to my stomach, wondering if my wife is cheating on me? Those words hit me harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I felt a flicker of guilt, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to let him turn this around on me, ... You're being dramatic, I said finally, but my voice didn't sound as strong as I wanted it to. I'm not cheating on you, Grayson. You're just too paranoid to see that. He didn't respond right away. He just sat back and took a long sip of his beer, his eyes never leaving mine. The silence was suffocating, and for a moment I thought he might drop it. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. Declan's married, isn't he? My heart stopped. How did he know about that? I hadn't mentioned it, and as far as I knew, Declan hadn't either. Yeah, I said cautiously, trying to keep my voice steady. So what? So, Grayson said, his voice tight. What kind of married man spends his time texting another man's wife? I felt my throat tighten, but I forced a laugh. Oh, please, Declan's just a friendly guy. You're reading way too much into this. Am I? He asked, his tone sharp. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're both crossing lines you shouldn't be crossing. That was the moment I knew I had to end this conversation. He was getting too close to the truth, and I couldn't afford to let him keep digging. I'm done talking about this, I said, grabbing my phone and heading toward the bedroom. Believe whatever you want, Grayson. I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated. As I walked away, I could feel his eyes on me. And for the first time, I started to wonder if maybe he wasn't going to let this go. Maybe he was going to keep pushing until he found anything that confirmed his suspicions. And if that happened, well, I wasn't sure what I'd do. The next morning, Grayson was gone before I woke up. That wasn't unusual, he often left early for work, but something felt different. The house was too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. I brushed it off, telling myself he was just cooling down and everything would blow over. It always did, right? I spent most of the day scrolling through social media, trying to distract myself, but there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind, like I was waiting for something to happen. I checked my phone every few minutes, half expecting a message from Grayson or Declan, but there was nothing. Not a single text. It felt like the calm before the storm. By the time Grayson got home that evening, I was on edge. He walked in, set his briefcase down, and looked at me with this expression I couldn't read. It wasn't anger exactly, but it wasn't forgiveness either. It was something in between, something heavier. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "How was your day?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat down at the kitchen table and stared at me. "We need to talk," he said finally. My stomach dropped. "What now?" I asked, trying to sound annoyed, but my voice came out shaky. Grayson reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward me, ... My heart stopped when I saw what he was showing me, ... It was a screenshot of a text thread between Declan and his wife. The messages were blurry, but the name at the top was unmistakable. "Vivian, what is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You tell me," he said, his tone cold. "Declan's wife found these on his phone and sent them to me. She thought I deserved to know." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind raced, trying to figure out how this had happened. Declan must have slipped up, or maybe his wife had been suspicious too. Either way, it didn't matter now. The evidence was right in front of Grayson, and there was no way to explain it away. I started, but he cut me off. "Don't," he said sharply. "Don't insult me by lying again. Just tell me the truth, Vivian. How long has this been going on?" I stared at him, my mouth dry. "It wasn't like that," I said finally, my voice shaking. "We were just talking. That's it." "Talking?" he repeated, his voice rising. "You call that just talking? Do you think I'm stupid?" I flinched at the anger in his voice, but I forced myself to keep going. "It didn't mean anything, Grayson. I was lonely, okay? You're always busy, always distracted. Declan was just there. He listened to me." Grayson laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "So this is my fault? You flirt with my coworker behind my back and somehow it's my fault?" "I didn't say that," I snapped. "But maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have felt the need to talk to someone else." His face twisted in anger, and for a moment, I thought he might yell again. But instead, he just stood up and grabbed his jacket. "You know what, Vivian? I'm done. I can't do this anymore." Panic shot through me. "What do you mean? You're done?" He looked at me with an expression I'll never forget, like he was seeing me for the first time, and he didn't like what he saw. "I mean, I'm done with this marriage. I'm done with the lies and the games. I deserve better than this." I stood there, frozen, as he walked out the door. I wanted to chase after him, to beg him to stay, but my feet wouldn't move. Part of me knew he was right. I'd pushed him too far, and there was no coming back from this. The next few days were a blur. Grayson didn't come home, and I didn't hear from him at all. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. Eventually, I got a text from him saying he needed space and would be staying with a friend for a while. That's when it hit me. I'd really messed things up this time. Declan texted me a few times, but I ignored him. What was the point? His wife was probably tearing him apart too. And I didn't need any more drama in my life. I spent most of my time lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, and wondering how everything had gone so wrong. In the end, Grayson didn't come back. He filed for divorce a few weeks later, and I didn't fight it. What was there to fight for? I destroyed the trust in our marriage, and I couldn't blame him for not wanting to stick around. Looking back, I wish I could say I learned some big lesson or had some epiphany about my behavior, but the truth is, I'm still trying to figure it out. I know I messed up, but part of me still thinks Grayson could have tried harder too. Maybe that's just me deflecting, but it's how I feel. Either way, it's too late now. Grayson's gone, and I'm left picking up the pieces of a life I thought was unbreakable. Maybe one day I'll figure out how to move on. But for now, I'm just here, alone.